Alright, it's Matt from Heroes Beacon, and I'm here to open a box of Magic Origins. What kind of cool stuff we're going to get out of this one? Let's find out.
So anything before we get started?
Oh yeah.
What are you, is there anything you'd like to see?
I'd like to see some of the new Planeswalkers, the flip card Planeswalkers, which is a neat idea. Older players might remember that there were flip cards in the Innistrad block, where it was a card that was one thing, and then when a certain condition was met, it flipped over and became something much more powerful. Well, they did the same thing for these guys, except it's a legendary creature that, you know, some pretty good card, that when it reaches a certain condition, it flips over and becomes a Planeswalker. In this case, one of 5 Planeswalkers that we already know and either love or tolerate. So there's one for each color, and they're all fairly iconic characters. Gideon for white, Jace for blue, Nissa for green, Liliana for black, and Chandra for red. Other neat cards, well, you know me, I'm always looking for foils, but yeah, I'm pretty excited to open the whole box, so
Let's see what we got.
first pack. Just going to skim the commons here. There's some themes in this set. Black-green elves is a big theme. It's one that's been, the last time we saw it was in the Lorwyn block, where the elves are sort of kind of jerks. Let's see, so Meteorite, Fiery Conclusion, Honored Hierarch. That's a neat card. It's this card is pretty good. It does some neat stuff. It's got what's called Renown, which is a new ability. So if a creature has Renown 1, whenever it deals combat damage to a player, if it isn't Renown, you put a +1/+1 counter on it and it becomes Renown. So it's sort of a, oh, you got in and hit him? Well, you're famous now kind of thing. And he can tap to add mana of your mana pool as long as he's Renown. Sort of a poor man's Noble Hierarch, which was a recent release. Let's see, pack 2. Menace is another keyword it's a keyword for something that we've already had. It's this creature can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures, which is pretty useful. It's a great ability for red. Green probably has some. Black probably does too. Just reflecting that the card is a little tougher to deal with. Exquisite Firecraft. 4 damage to target creature or player. And Spell Mastery, one of our other abilities. It says, if there are 2 or more instant or sorcery cards in your graveyard, it can't be countered. So a little bonus for having flung a few spells around already. It's kind of cool. Pack 3. Disciple of the Ring. There's our first mythic. Neat card. You pay 1 and exile an instant or sorcery card from your graveyard, and you get to do any choice of a number of things. Also notable, I think, this core set has gold cards in it. I say core set because that's sort of what it is, but this is apparently the last core set we're getting. And they don't historically have a lot of gold cards in them because they're sort of introductory. Pardon me. And we don't want to confuse the newer players. Scry. Scry is a mechanic that's been around since, back in the Mirrodin block, the original one. And it's been back a couple of times, most recently in the Theros block. But Scry is a neat little utility that, like a spell, it does something, that's good. But as a bonus, you get to look at the next card you would be drawing, and then you can choose if you want to draw that and leave it there, or put it on the bottom. It's not what you're looking for. Days Undoing, another mythic. 2 in a row. This thing is weird. So, sorcery, 2 blue. Each player shuffles his or her hand into and graveyard into his or her library, then draws 7 cards. If it's your turn, end the turn. Which is a weird thing to add to a sorcery, because normally that would be your turn. But Magic is complicated now, and there's things that can make you cast sorceries on not your turn. We're already 2 mythics in. It's pretty encouraging. Pile Driver. Alright, that is a card that hasn't been printed since the old days, back when Magic had a really hard to read border and very old stuff. This guy's nuts, and a lot of people are thinking that modern goblins and standard goblins are going to be a thing again, because this guy is absurd, especially against blue. Pardon me. Pretty happy with this box so far. 2 mythics and a pile driver. Let's keep it going. Foil Mage Ring Bully and an Evolutionary Leap. This card I got to play with in the pre-release. It's sort of neat. It's, I mean, it turns your chump blockers into something else, which is better than nothing. Anything else to go on there? No, some more spell mastery stuff. Quite a few themes of artifacts and enchantments in this set too, which I think is neat, because while a lot of competitive formats don't view them as really viable, I like them. Talent of the Telepath. That's another interesting one with spell mastery. Basically lets you eat up your opponent's library a bit and cast some of the stuff that's in there. Add a little insult to injury. Outland Colossus. Heard good things about this guy. That renowned 6, which makes him double his size if he ever hits your opponent. It's pretty good. One flavor note about this set is that, now since it's got, you know, those legendary creatures that turn into planeswalkers, whenever someone becomes a planeswalker, supposedly, they have a huge, like, traumatic experience where they go pop onto some other plane. And so not only does this set include the planes that these 5 planeswalkers begin on, but it also has stuff from the planes that they go to. For example, see that guy there? That's Griselbrand, and he's a demon from Innistrad. That's Liliana. She started off on just plain old Dominaria, but when she had her planeswalker moment, she went boom to Innistrad, which is a terrible place to go, unless you're Liliana. In that respect, it's sort of like a greatest hits of Magic locations sort of set. Abbot of Keral Keep. Prowess, and this guy's neat. I got to use one of these in the pre-release too, but he never really did much for me. Because your instinct is to play him on turn 2, but if you do that, you really can't do anything, because you don't get to cast that card for free. The Foil Thorn Bow Archer. Shiny. Graveblade Marauder. This is one of those weird Death Touch cards with a little tiny bit of power. So, whenever he deals combat damage to a player, that player loses life equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. So, your opponent can probably deal with taking 1 damage from this guy, but that's going to sting if you have a lot of dead things. And if you're playing black, you probably have a lot of dead things. Shivan Reef, Get some Pain Lands. They're back from the last set. Sort of interesting that these guys are in because there's a lot of speculation that the enemy color fetch lands are going to be printed in the Battle for Zendikar set that's coming up, which will make these kind of bad. This is Revelation. Scry 5. That is a lot to scry. And yeah, that's kind of a neat thing. It's super expensive. Doubt it'll see very much play. But in world like, you know, Commander and stuff like that, could be pretty devastating. Mizium Meddler. That's... Izzet-based cards are super strange. Like this guy's flavor is that he's from Ravnica and he's part of the Izzet Guild, who are a blue-red guild. And as you can see, they just do weird stuff. Kothofed. Soul Hoarder. Pretty good name. Yeah, this is this guy's reeking in flavor text because he's apparently one of the demons that the Planeswalker Liliana has a pact with. As you can see, whenever a permanent owned by another player is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card and lose 1 life. That's a pretty strong power, if you ask me, especially where he's a 6/6 flying creature for 6. This guy will probably end a lot of games on his own, and the ones he doesn't end on his own, he will help you draw cards to get there.
There we go.
Chief of the Foundry might be my favorite uncommon in the set. I like how it's priced. I like the power and toughness for this ability. In a set that has tons of little things that make 1/1 token artifacts, it can be a bit of a blowout. Mana Gorger Hydra. Player casts a spell, put a +1/+1 counter on him. That could get out of hand fast. Also, he's got Trample. Not bad. Still no Planeswalkers. Woodland Bellower. Here's another mythic. Enters the battlefield. Search your library for a non-legendary creature. Oh, he just goes and gets you another dude. And he's a 6/5 for 6 that gets you another guy. That's pretty efficient. Languish. Some premium board wipeage right here. All creatures get -4/-4 until end of turn. This is going to see a lot of standard play, especially in decks that are running currently the Siege Rhino, because that guy's 4/5, which means he won't be dead. Oh, wow. Jace's Sanctum. That's kind of neat. Instant sorceries cost 1 less to cast, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you scry 1. Probably going to see some play somewhere. Foil heavy infantry. Pretty fancy looking. No Planeswalkers yet. If I don't get one, I'm blaming Steve. Dwynen, Giltleaf Dane. This is another crazy card. 3/4 for 4 with reach. Pretty good. Other elves get +1/+1. And whenever he attacks, you gain a life for each attacking elf you control. So, I guess I'm building an elf deck. Alhammaret, High Arbiter. The Sphinx. He flies, and he shuts your opponent's goodies down. Doesn't seem like a great card. He's super expensive, but I mean, if you get him out, he's a 5/5 flyer, and you can probably just nix your opponent's big removal card they were holding on to stop him with, so can probably end the game pretty fast if you do get him out. Let's see. Gaia's Revenge. This card was a lot of fun in the pre-release. Pretty expensive, but it's hard to stop. A foil Iroas Champion. Another Outland Colossus. Animist's Awakening. Okay. Reveal the top X cards of your library and put all lands from among them onto the battlefield tapped. And rest of the bottom in any order. If there are 2 or more instant or sorceries. Ooh, okay. That's got some stuff going on. There are definitely decks that could abuse that. I know there are a few uncommons in this set that focus heavily on doing extra stuff when lands come into play. So dropping 6 or 7 lands late in the game to make maybe a bunch of extra dudes or stuff like that. Not insignificant. Harbinger of the Tides, Merfolk, Wizard. You can cast him as if he had Flash, if you paid 2 more to cast it. I love Flash. I love playing cards on my opponent's turns. It makes them confused and sad. When it enters the battlefield, return target tapped creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. So, your opponent attacks you with some dudes. You flash this guy in, pop one of their big guys back to their hand, and then block their other guy. Like I said, they'll be confused and sad. Molten Vortex. Pay a red, discard a land in the card. And it deals 2 damage to target creature or player. Okay, so that's sort of not a quite functional reprint of Seismic Assault, an old enchantment card that is just discard a land to deal 2 damage. But I think they realized that card might have been slightly broken. And finally added a little mana cost to it, so you can't do it a million times. What have we here? Gideon's Phalanx. Pretty heavy cost, but put 4 2/2 white knight creature tokens with vigilance onto the battlefield. So 8 mana for 4 guys, that's not bad. And it's instant speed as well. And spell mastery, creatures you control get indestructible until end of turn. So that's a really good trick to play on your opponent as well. When they attack you, you throw down these 4 knights, they're indestructible, they just gang block something and kill it. Lots of interesting interaction cards in this set, I find. Foil Swamp, and oh, it's Nissa, Vastwood Seer. Finally, I get to show you something really cool. So, she's a legendary creature, an elf scout. 2/2 for 3, not bad cost. When she enters the battlefield, you can search your library for a basic forest card, reveal it, put it in your hand. So she goes to get a forest. There's nothing wrong with that. This card's fine like it is. But whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if you control 7 or more lands, you exile her. Away she goes. And return her to the battlefield transformed. And what is transformed? This is transformed. She's a planeswalker now. And she's got some pretty cool abilities. First one is reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land, you put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, you put it in your hand. So basically draw a card or slightly better. -2, you get a legendary elemental token you can put into play, which doesn't seem that useful, but it does slow things down. It's a big body on the field. And her ultimate ability, -7, you untap up to 6 lands. They become 6/6 elemental creatures. They're still lands. That is not an end of turn effect. They stay that way. That is a lot of dudes. So yeah, got a planeswalker. Wouldn't mind another. But she's pretty cool. Cathion's Irregulars. 4 mana, 4/3. Pretty good. Renown 1, so when they deal damage to an opponent, they get a +1/+1 counter. And you can pay 2 white to tap target creature. Now, I saw these guys just tear the place up in the pre-release because people, you know, you don't expect to have really more than 4 or 5 creatures on the board, and when you can tap down 2 or 3 of them every turn, you get through for a lot of damage. You also shut your opponent down when they're trying to attack you. So, pretty good control-y white card with offensive upside. Starfield of Nyx. We have another mythic. Beginning of your upkeep, you may return target enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Seems useful. As long as you control 5 or more enchantments. Each other non-aura enchantment you control is a creature, in addition to its other types, and has base power and toughness, each equal to the converted mana cost. So, this thing, if you're playing a lot of enchantments, could be a 5/5 beater. That's not bad. I'm sure there are decks that will find a way to really exploit that. Down to the last 6 packs. Wild Instincts and another Graveblade Marauder. Graveblade Marauder.
Your second of that. So, there we go.
Alright, final 5 packs. Here we go. Spoiler of Souls. I've got a playset now. This guy is... I think it's really good, but I haven't figured out exactly how to exploit it yet. Can't block, 3/1 for 2, so super aggressive. And you can pay 2 black and exile 2 other creature cards from your graveyard. Return it from your graveyard to the battlefield. So just whenever it dies, as long as you get 2 more guys in the graveyard, you can bring it back. And that seems like they're trying to make you think it's as good as some other cards that just brought themselves back automatically. It's definitely not as good as some of those other cards, but it's trying. We'll see if it sees any play. Pia and Kiran Nalaar. Another legendary creature. It's Chandra's folks. They're rebels. They love each other very much. Look at them. They have a nice view of all these thopters and buildings. And they do neat stuff. You get some thopters in play, and you can blow them up to deal damage to things, because I guess they're terrorists. And a foil Embermaw Hellion. Yay, foil rares. That makes me happy. Trample 4/5 for 5. Not bad. If another red source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals that damage +1. And that's source, not spell. So your creatures do more damage. Your guys with trample do more damage. It's pretty good. Not unhappy with it, that's for sure. Alright, third last. Here we go. Vryn Wingmare. Flying 2/1 for 3, non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. Not bad. It's a slightly more expensive flying version of a card from Innistrad block that saw a lot of play. And also this one isn't legendary like that one was, so you can see this being a thing in the standard environment. Second last pack. Hangerback Walker. This is one of those weird cards that's probably not as good as I wish it was, but it's fun anyway. So it costs XX, so double X, and it's 0/0, but it comes into play with X +1/+1 counters on it. So if you pay 2, it's a 1/1. If you pay 4, it's a 2/2. And when it dies, it explodes full of little Thopter artifact creatures with flying for every +1/+1 counter that was on it. And you can pay 1 and tap it to just crank up the number of counters on it. And the final pack. Scab Clan Berserker. Haste and Renown, which is a great combination because your opponent won't see it coming and then suddenly it's bigger. And if your opponent casts a non-creature spell, if it's renowned, it deals 2 damage to that player. That's a card. Well, that is my box of Magic Origins. It's not quite as good as I would have hoped it would have been. Certainly not as good as the Modern Masters packs that we opened a couple of months ago. But I got a Planeswalker, I got a foil rare, I got some other neat stuff. And I hope you enjoyed watching. Thanks.